I'm Doreen Steenland, your host, and we have a special guest here with us today, Chris Coursey. I understand there is a brain circuit that helps us stay relational. What should we know about this?
Yeah, this is really fascinating, Doreen. And interpersonal neurobiology has given us a lot of just brilliant insights on the brain. And specifically, what we want to focus on today is the relational right hemisphere. So the right hemisphere of the brain is largely nonverbal. And this is a part of the brain that kind of houses our character and our identity. So when we think about who am I, and whatever would come out of that information is kind of stored in this relational brain. And one of the exciting, I think, insights about this right hemisphere is it has this progressively integrated and closely interconnected relational center. I like to call it the relational engine in my Joy Switch book, because basically there's four main centers in this right hemisphere that ideally work together as long as I can manage what I feel. And there's a hierarchical approach to this part of the brain, whereas if I can't manage what I feel, some of the higher parts of this relational engine will actually go offline. And this is where you see people just react, right? They say or do things they wish they could take back later. And so this center runs on the fuel of joy. And joy is what we're going to talk about in a little bit. But basically, this relational center works together just like your car engine. As long as I can manage my feelings, I can regulate my emotions, I can quiet as I need to quiet, I can stay relationally connected with people. But when things go south, what happens is this engine kind of breaks down and I start reacting. And so this is a really important reality, especially for our friends in the medical field who are dealing with so much stress right now and anxiety and just a lot of hard circumstances, what I consider to be some of the toughest jobs in the world, to be honest. And so this relational center ideally has training. And so when it has proper training, which includes like seeing examples and modeling of how other people handle the hard stuff, do they suffer well when things start to go wrong, or do they, in a sense, relationally fall apart? And so the reason I wrote a book about this really is it's life-changing. Like we can all think about times where we want to be with people and we enjoy interacting and we just feel like we're glad to be with people, especially our loved ones. And then there's other times, frankly, we just don't want to be with people. We'd rather be on our phone. We'd rather be doing anything but interacting. And so times we're relational, I'm actually curious, I'm creative, I can feel some joy, and I actually want to be here, and I just feel engaged. I feel present. But when this relational circuit starts to dim, starts to go down, then what happens is we start reacting. Some of us shift into high energy reactions, Doreen, and we see people who are just like losing it, gloriously losing it in high energy, or we see some people kind of just shut down and disconnect and withdraw. But the end result, basically, both expressions get us to the same place where this relational center is not working. And so that's why I'm excited about our time today, because there's a lot we can learn about this relational center that ideally should be on and helps us interact with people and be present.
Yes. So when we're in this relational center, we're really behaving as our best selves. We're behaving in alignment with our values, with our character, with who we really want to be, how we want to leave a legacy, right?
That's right. And you know what? That's the gold. That's the gold here, is that we are the best version of ourselves when this relational center is working. And again, it can work even under really tough conditions. It's just when we can't manage what's going on, we can't manage internally, maybe what's going on externally, then it starts to, we throw a rod in auto terms where the engine is just not working properly. And we're not going to get anywhere when the engine starts to break down. And that's where we kind of end up relationally floundering in some unwanted way. And there's nothing fun about that. There's nothing fun about that reality.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about joy. First, let's start with a general definition of how you define joy in your book.
Yeah, I just want to, give a shout out to Alan Shore from UCLA, because he's really the researcher that has put joy on the map. And my colleague and friend Jim Wilder has taken a lot of Shore's material and really made it like practical in terms of how can I apply this. So basically what Shore describes joy is when we're glad to be together, where you're glad to be with a person and you light up to see this person. And Shore would also say that you are the sparkle in someone else's eyes. So we all have those friends, right? Where we get together to grab coffee or tea, and when we see each other, faces light up. So joy is a very genuine, this is a nonverbal response. So it's not even the words that really register joy in that right hemisphere. It is the face and lights up, right? It is the voice, it's the mannerisms, it's the gestures, it's how we move our body. And eventually the words will also help, but primarily this little joy response in the brain is euphoric. And so they've studied infants and their parents, and just watching what's happening when the infant sees the parent's face light up to see them, and endorphins are released. And it is like an amazing, glorious moment for that little one to see the face of someone that loves me light up. And joy is contagious. So when you're glad to be with someone, you can't help it but share some joy. Even with the barista who's getting your coffee, you're feeling some glad to be together. And that's really the beauty of joy. It's genuine. You can't fake it as far as the relational right hemisphere is concerned. It's either there or it's not. And we all just kind of thrive when we think about those joyful moments and have those people in our lives that we're glad to be together. It's a great motivator.
Yeah. So what I've noticed in my own life is when I am super busy and task oriented and running about from thing to thing, that circuit kind of shuts off for me.
Yes.
And people could be sitting there and it's almost like they're not, right?
Yes.
You're
Yep.
in their presence, but you're not really present.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And so that's how I notice it in a big way in my everyday life. I have to then pause and say, oh, wait a second. I'm putting tasks above people.
Yes, that's great.
And reorient myself.
See, and just noticing that, Doreen, is really the game changer, that you notice it, you catch it. And I think everybody can relate with what you just shared, that there are those times where we're just solving problems, we're troubleshooting, we're not relational, excuse me, we're not relational in a moment, we're just like, we're locked in on something. And it's kind of, we notice the analytical centers in our brain are kind of running the show, and we're just, we're focused on that detail. And that's one thing that scientists now know about the left and the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere tends to get locked onto a detail, and it can be a good detail. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's just we get locked onto one detail, whereas that relational right hemisphere kind of sees the bigger picture. So I like your example, because that's a great example of that relational right hemisphere that just kind of steps back and goes, wait a minute, I'm focusing on these details. I'm not in my relational sweet spot. And that right there really is the gold in our relationships, that in the moments where we're solving problems, it feels like, why do I need to be relational? I'm just like putting a fire out. I don't need to really, build joy right now. But the reality is, when this joy center, this relational joy center in our right hemisphere is all working together, our brain's working together better. So we get more creativity to solve problems. We just happen to be relational in the process. So we actually can still be relational even while, we navigate the hard things in our lives. but catching it's the key. Catching it's
Yeah,
the key.
I love what you're saying, because it's not about abandoning reason,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
It's
That's right.
about taking that right hemisphere and putting that section of your brain in charge and filtering everything through
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
That's where the power comes from, when we are able to tap into
Mm,
all of those resources, because
mm,
that's where we get to be curious and explore and see
mm.
possibilities, and all of the wonderful creative and innovative things that come from that hemisphere. And
Yeah.
another point I'm noticing that you're making about being relational is this energy that two people have when there's a positive connection.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That part of the brain really is an amplifier. So
Mhm.
when it's been trained to run on the fuel of joy, we can take a little bit of joy in the environment and we can amplify it and we can make it bigger. And if my brain's not trained to run on the fuel of joy, then it's probably run on the fuel of fear. And what happens with fear is I lock on to the one thing that's wrong in the environment, and or a little bit of anger that maybe somebody has, and I make it bigger instead of putting that fire out. What happens is I become angry, I become short, I become snappy, I become these unhelpful versions of myself, and the end is not very satisfying. So the beauty of what we're talking about here really is this is life changing. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It's actually very easy to practice. It's not super hard to build some joy. It just takes a little bit of effort, in the beginning of basically kind of trying to learn some new habits.
Yes. So we're talking really about building new pathways in the brain, right? Instead of
Yeah.
taking the old pathways that were wide and well worn, we're going to
Yes.
learn new ways of reacting and relating to people.
That's the beauty of this, is that
Yeah.
we can learn those new pathways. Thankfully, the brain is plastic in terms of, we can learn those new habits and new patterns. We aren't stuck with the old stuff that maybe we learned earlier in our lives, that we can make these changes. And part of it we just kind of have to value the process. Like, I'm not satisfied with my legacy. I'm not satisfied with the result of some of these interactions. What can I do to grow more joy? And joy, as I said, is contagious. It's fun to see what a little bit of joy can do in an environment where we're relational. We can calm down when we lose it. We can take responsibility and apologize when we run people over.
Yes.
And we can still be glad to be together, even though maybe we're dealing with some really hard stuff. But joy is that sense of, if I'm going to go through this, I'm glad you're here with me and I can appreciate the people around me.
Wow. That is huge for people in medicine. Because of that contagion. If there's a
Yeah.
negativity and a discouragement about who you're working with and not feeling like you're part of the team, that
Mm.
affects the whole unit. It affects the whole team. It affects everything that is happening for them, and it
Mm.
creates this, as you said, emotional contagion. So let's talk about this
Mhm.
peace test that you talk
Mhm.
about in your book. What does this peace test mean?
Yeah, so the peace test was really what I kind of came up with. It's just a simple tool to help people notice when they're losing their peace. So as we start practicing, growing some joy, learning to live relationally, we pay attention to, what does it feel like when I'm in my sweet spot versus what does it feel like when I'm kind of relationally offline. And with a little bit of practice, we can learn when we've lost our joy and quickly get back. So that's kind of the key here. We don't want to stay out of joy for too long, because it's not a good place for us to be. Like, there's no good things that grow in that garden when joy is elusive. And a few weeds start to grow in that garden relationally. So the peace test is really a simple way to help people recognize, wow, how am I doing? Am I in my relational sweet spot right now or not? And so one thing we do is we just pay attention to our body. That's the P in peace. Just notice what's happening in your body. You pay attention to your body. Your body is the canvas for your brain. And your body and your brain have a very close, important relationship where they talk to each other a lot. So paying attention to our body helps us to kind of gauge our emotional and mental well-being. And the E is for evaluate my breathing. So after I pay attention to my body, I just notice, how's my breathing right now? Am I breathing deep and rhythmic, or am I breathing shallow? And there's a lot of important research on the importance of breathing and how deep breathing helps to keep us calm, right? And deep breathing helps to calm us down when we're getting anxious. So your breathing's like the first thing to go when you start getting stressed out and upset. So pay attention to my body, evaluate my breathing, and then just, attention and focus is the A. So what's happening? What are you focused on? Do you find that you're focused on things that are comforting and bring you some peace and some joy? Are you reflecting on your day and hopefully noticing the good stuff? Or are you just locked on like a heat-seeking missile to what's bothering you and what's upsetting you? So the attention and the focus tell us a lot about our joy levels. And the C is calm or busy thoughts. So just, kind of tracking what's going on here with my thoughts. Are they calm? What's the fruit of my thoughts right now? Or are they just really busy and racing? And we all probably can relate to those times we're trying to go to bed after maybe a hard day and our mind just won't stop. That's actually a good indicator that I need a little bit of joy to quiet my body, because my mind is just racing. And then the last is the E is the easing muscle tension. So you just notice what's happening with your muscle tension. How's your shoulders? I always tell people to scan your body from the top of your head to the soles of your feet. What do you notice? And just, you probably might have some, stiff muscles when we start to get kind of stressed or anxious. So that's a very simple way, even just having that, labeled on a whiteboard, just peace, and just the reminder can go a long way. When I work with leadership groups, I'll often just have them hey, pay attention. What story is your body telling you right now? And let's get some joy and some peace going.
So good. So what I'm noticing is that really, to live in this place of joy, we need to start becoming intentional.
Yeah, that's right. You got it. We do. Because if we're not practicing joy habits, then something else always grows in its place. And so, a little bit goes a long way. There's lots of great research on the benefits of gratitude. Gratitude helps to kind of turn on this relational engine so it works together. What we call appreciation is packaged joy. So even when you reflect on those joyful moments from your week, and you just take even a few minutes a day can go a long way. And even sharing those with someone, you get more out of those moments of joy when you reflect and just thinking about them. Maybe before you go home and interact with your family, just spend 5-10 minutes on the drive home trying to amplify a little bit of joy by thinking about the good stuff from your day. Even though it might have been a really hard day, we try to notice what we can appreciate from our day. And what that does is it really trains your brain and specifically your attention system to start scanning the environment for good things.
Wow. So I found in medicine that emotional contagion, and it's, a lot of times there's this negative emotional contagion. And how do we return quickly to joy?
That's such a good question, because that's ultimately where the rubber meets the road. Yes. Right? Is how do we get back to joy when somebody popped a hole in our joy balloon? Yeah. And what we do. And so it's helpful to know that your brain will always do what it's learned to do. So your brain always looks back to predict what's around the corner. So you look in the rearview mirror to predict what's around the corner. So one of the ways we train our brain to get back to joy anytime we lose it is through storytelling. And so when you start sharing stories of times you've returned to joy, maybe from sadness or from anger, from hopelessness or disgust or shame, or fear, when you tell those stories of I was feeling this and here's how I got back, that is one of the best ways you learn to get back to joy. Even if you invite other people to say, hey, what was a hard moment from your week and how did you get back to joy, or how did you recover from that? Those stories are gold. So big picture storytelling is one of the best skills for learning this. And my friend Marcus Warner and I, who wrote a few books together on joy, We use the acrostic cake. And so cake is one of the things that people can very practically, practice for holding on to joy or getting back to joy. And the C is just stands for curiosity. So like, what are the things that you're curious about here? And are you curious what's happening in other people's minds? That's a good sign your joy center is working well in the brain if you're curious. And the A is appreciation. So can you feel some joy? So if I'm really not doing well, and I'm just offline, even trying to hold on to some of those joyful moments can help my brain come around back to joy and get relational again. The K in cake is just kindness. So even being kind with other people can help get you back into a joyful state, even though you don't feel like it. Little acts of kindness can go a long way because you will see the effect of that on other people, which kind of helps your brain come back, so to speak, when it's offline. And the E is just the eye contact in cake. So just looking people in the eyes is a great way to notice, first to gauge whether I'm in a joyful place or not. Because if I'm in offline, I probably don't want to really look people in the eye, or they get like the death stare, which is not helpful. And we've all probably done that.
Yes.
But eye contact. So, if you're just really having a hard time, just looking people in the eyes, and as you interact with them can help kind of bring you back. So these are very, simple ways. Quieting is a great way to also get your joy back when you've lost it. Even if you can only, take 60 seconds and just take a moment, deep breathing, catch your breath. Quieting goes a long way. Some of us prefer like having some space, when we're offline and we want to get our joy back, or some prefer connecting with others. So it helps to notice, are you someone that needs a connection when you've lost your joy and that helps get you back? Or do you just kind of need to go into the bathroom for a moment and just catch your breath and get away from people? So it's kind of like noticing what helps and what doesn't help.
Yeah. So I feel like so many of us are disconnected from our bodies.
Yeah.
And we're kind of just going through the motions. And what you're suggesting is that we're checking in with what's happening in our bodies and experiencing that energy or those emotions that are coming up, and not just stuffing them back down.
Yes.
But saying, what is this emotion trying to tell me?
Yes.
What do I need to learn here?
That's right.
Getting curious is such a powerful tool, and it's a connector. Because when we're curious about how someone else feels also, we're showing them that we care. That's that kindness, right? We're connecting with them in a powerful way. And that increases our joy when we can connect with others. So it's this chain reaction, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And a little bit goes a long way. And that's what I tell people. Just try a little bit here going into your day. Think of some of your colleagues and how you might be able to appreciate your colleagues and show some of those acts of kindness. Like a little bit of joy really does go a long way. And a little bit of self-awareness helps as well, because sometimes the people around us see that we lost our joy before we have. And so even just starting to notice your body, as you said, is a really good way to hold on to some joy and grow the good stuff.
Well, this has been amazing. Do you have any last minute advice before we end this call today?
You know what? I would recommend everybody to make it a practice of sharing appreciation and gratitude with the people in your life. A little bit goes a long way. Just think about some of those characteristics or those qualities in other people that you enjoy. And when you can share some appreciation, it's a great way, simple way to build some joy in the environment. So just, find creative ways to convey appreciation to people that you love and care about.
I love it. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today.